5 years ago, I had a horrible motorcycle accident on I-35, got hit from behind going 75 miles per hour. You don't walk away from that. And I think it was an opportunity for the Lord to just say, I'm going to hurt you a little bit, but I just want you to know you're still here because I got some more things for you to do.
All right, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, thank you for joining me in the den.
Pastor Joel, it's great to be here, and happy 25th anniversary for Bridge Church, and it's a pleasure and honor to be with y'all.
Thank you so much. It's our honor to have you on. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while.
Yeah.
We met up earlier this year at a memorial, a fallen officers memorial in Corpus, and I saw you there, and I was kind of amazed that you were in town, and I was like, does everybody see this? Do y'all know who this is? So it was really neat to get to meet you and to invite you to be on the podcast.
Mhm.
And scheduling issues have brought us to November 24th. Here we are, and finally we got you on the podcast. So
Glad to be down here.
amen. So you are living in Texas.
Yeah, I've been I finished up my military career back in 2004 in the state of Texas at Fort Hood. Then I went to South Florida because after you've dragged your wife around for all of those years, and on top of that, her dad was career military. So I said, wherever you want to go. So we lived in South Florida for 10 years, and then we got the opportunity to come back here in 2014. So I live up in Garland, Texas, just to the east of Dallas.
All right. Well, Texas and Florida right now are kind of racing to be who is the strongest conservative state. It seems like Florida is kind of surpassing us, becoming more conservative than we are.
It's sad, but that's truly what is happening because what Governor DeSantis has really done is, when you look at what he accomplished in winning South Florida in his last reelection, Texas needs to be very careful about bringing in a lot of these businesses and corporations from New York, New Jersey, California, Illinois, because when you look at our major urban population centers here, where I live in Dallas, Houston, Harris County, Austin, Travis County, San Antonio, Bexar County, El Paso County, those are deep blue red areas. And that's where the population is growing down through that I-35 corridor, I-10 corridor over. So we've got to be very circumspect. And when you hear about how all of a sudden Wall Street is going to move down to Y'all Street in Dallas because of Mamdani being elected there as the New York City mayor, we need to tell people that think about why you're coming to Texas. And we need to have people understand the history behind Texas. I was fortunate to go to a university that has a very unique nickname. No other school has this nickname. And the school I went to was Tennessee. And the nickname was the Volunteers.
The volunteers.
And so where that name came from because it was established here in the state of Texas. And all of these folks coming in to Texas, we've got to get them to understand you're talking about the only state in the country that has its own Declaration of Independence. They fought for its independence all by itself. So yes, next year we're coming up on the 250th celebration of American independence, but it's also going to be the 190th celebration of the Texas independence.
Awesome. I love that history because I believe that Texas is a very unique and special state. And, it is different. There are beautiful states all around the country, but for whatever reason, just Texas just stands out above them all.
Well, you look at it. I mean, you start out in the piney woods over in East Texas and the beauty of those rolling hills, and you go down in Texas Hill Country. I mean, there's nothing like it. When I tell people that the second largest canyon after the Grand Canyon is here in Texas, Palo Duro, and then of course you go out to the Big Bend Mountains and the Guadalupe Mountains, and it's just incredible. And you think about the natural resources that Texas is blessed with. I mean, the oil and gas and the beautiful Gulf of America. I love saying that now.
Yeah.
The Gulf of America that we have here. And so it's a very blessed state. And I think that, again, when you understand the history and all the blessings that we have here, We got to make sure that people coming to this state realize it. You know, if you're out there watching this podcast and you know people that have recently moved into Texas and you live here, encourage them to go to the Alamo and get them to understand what happened there. Encourage them to go to the San Jacinto battlefield
Mhm.
and get them to understand what happened in what I think it was 14 minutes that, Sam Houston and the Texans, whipped Santa
Santa
Ana
Ana.
there. It's just some incredible stories that are here.
Yes, sir. And I believe that we need to preserve that. We have uh, cities, and some people won't like this, but we have cities like Austin that used to be a symbol of Texas. Really, now is looking a lot like some of the unpopular
San
areas,
Francisco.
yeah, of California.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are coming from California over here to Texas because they love what's happening in Texas, but they come with the California mentality
Yeah.
that will mess up Texas and turn it into a California. So we have to be very careful about that.
You do. There are two types of people that are coming into Texas. You have the onesie twosies of folks that are leaving these blue states saying, hey, I got it. I had enough of it. I'm going to go to a Texas. I'm going to go to a Florida, whatever. But then when you pick up these, like I said, large businesses and corporations up north, we've got, State Farm, and you've got Toyota North America, Frito-Lay, all of these big corporations, to include now looking at JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs coming in. Someone has to connect with these folks to get them to realize, don't just come here because of the financial incentives that you've received. Come here because you want to make sure that you preserve Texas and you
Mm,
understand why you're coming here.
right.
And I think it's really important that if you're going to get the tax breaks, incentives to come here to Texas with your business and your corporation, we should probably limit the amount of employees that they're bringing from these other states,
Mhm.
and tell them you need to hire X amount of Texans,
Right.
people here, to help us to grow the success here in Texas.
Right. Right. I know. I thought I heard Governor Abbott kind of give an invitation to New Yorkers that were leaving the state to come over
Oh
here.
yeah,
And somebody was saying, no,
yeah,
don't do that.
yeah, and that's a concern because again, you know, I get it. You want to move the financial industry from up there in New York because you're concerned about the tax policies, the socialist economic policies
Mhm.
of Zoran Mamdani, but
Mhm.
don't come here and just vote for a lighter version of what he is.
Mhm.
Come here and understand what makes Texas, special. And it's so interesting because again, when you talk about the Florida Texas race, when you come down into Florida off of I-95 coming down Georgia into Florida, there's a billboard there that says, "Welcome to welcome to Florida. Now remember why you left." I
Mhm.
mean, they're telling people don't come down here and change, the state of Florida.
Right. All right. That's good. So we recently, speaking of Mandami, uh, he was in the White House with President Trump
Mhm.
meeting, and people start to freak out. And uh, I don't think it's necessarily Trump supporters that are kind of bothered by this or alarmed by this, because I've seen Trump operate, and I've seen the way he establishes relationships with all kinds of people. He was able to do it with Little Rocket Man, King Jong Un,
Yeah.
and so he was there meeting at the White House with Mamdami. Is that, did I say it
Yeah.
correctly? What do you think about that?
I would not have given him a platform.
Mm,
I think you have to be very careful about legitimizing someone that is an avowed Marxist
mhm,
and also a supporter of Islamic
mhm,
terrorism. Not just him, but I mean his family members. If you read some of the things that his father has written and also his mother, so you can have a relationship with someone like that, but when you invite him into the Oval Office, this is a very special place.
right.
You are really saying that, I am open to understanding your philosophy of governance.
Mm,
And I think what the president has to do, without a doubt, is now take a moment to get people to understand truly what Marxism is,
mhm,
what the offshoot, the economic model, what socialism is, understand what the societal model, what communism is. Because we live in a time when there's not a lot of Americans that remember the Iron Curtain. They don't remember the Cold War. They don't remember the Soviet Union. I was very fortunate as a young lieutenant in the Army, not once but twice, to go through Checkpoint Charlie to go over to East Berlin. So I saw department stores that were run by the government, what it looked like. I saw what it means when the government tells you what type of car you
Mhm.
can have. I saw what it was like for people that had no happiness, had no joy, no smiles, just ugly gray. And I saw East German secret police following us to make sure that no one interacted with us. Even though as American soldiers, we were free to go into East Berlin. And I walked the streets with Soviet officers. And, I remember every single one. And I also saw what, rent control housing looks like. It sucks. Um, but our young people today, they don't have that frame of reference.
Right.
And our young people today on these college and university campuses, and maybe even some high school campuses, where there are teachers that are advocating for this. So I think when you have the biggest bully pulpit in the world, now is a great time to use that to say, okay, this is what you really and truthfully voted for. This is, we take this word affordability, but there are two different ways to look at affordability. One way is to say that we put more money into your pocket so that you can make sure that you have affordability. Another way is to say that we're going to give you all of these things free and we're going to make it affordable for you, but that system has always failed.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that that's the conversation that we need to have, and who better to do that than someone like the President of the United States of
Mhm.
America?
Yeah, I think that definitely needs to be had. I know there's a lot of people that understand socialism, especially in Florida. You got a lot of Cubans that are
Yeah,
out there, and a lot of
and Venezuelans.
Venezuelans are out there as
Yes.
well. So, oh yes, yes, of course, and you have a lot of Hispanics that are of Mexican descent here in the United States that are here a few generations already that don't understand why Hispanics like Cubans would be voting Republican. And the reason is that they are familiar
Yeah,
with socialism,
yeah.
and that's why they're in the United States because they fled a socialist communist regime, if you would. And but some people that are not educated in that kind of stuff, they don't understand why
Mhm.
Hispanics, right? They lump everybody in a bunch. That all Hispanics are supposed to vote Democrat, and that's
Same with blacks.
yes.
Yes.
And if we don't, then we're some kind of traitors
Mhm.
or in whatever terms they might use for that. But really, it just shows a lot of ignorance that they don't pause and evaluate and think for themselves. Because if you really look at it,
Mhm.
I've said it many times that my parents raised me a certain way, but then they were expecting me to vote for policies that were completely opposite of how
Yeah.
they raised me. My parents were very conservative,
Mhm.
but they were told that, and they were instructed and kind of conditioned to vote Democrat
Yeah.
because supposedly that was the party of the poor, and they always saw
But
themselves as poor.
they're the party of the poor, and they like to keep people
Right.
poor, because what Democrats need are victims. And I always tell people constitutional conservatism, the real true classical liberalism is about individual rights, freedoms, and liberty. It is about making individuals victorious,
Mhm.
making them, not victims.
Right.
And it's interesting because I remember back when Joe Biden in 2020 was running against President Trump, and he said, if you're black and no, he said, if you don't vote for me, you're not really black.
Right.
And I say, how condescending and offensive
Right.
that you're trying to get me to believe that my skin color dictates how I think,
Right.
how I see the world. And again, when you look at the lack of critical thinking skills, and furthermore, the angst against people critically thinking for themselves,
Mhm.
because you get castigated and demonized in many different ways. I get told, Uncle Tom, sellout, white man's porch monkey,
Mm.
Oreo, all of these things. Why? Because you're upset because I don't want to think for myself. There's a great video exchange. I spoke at Northwestern University in Chicago back 2016,
Mhm.
2017. The topic was the Iranian nuclear agreement. And I love speaking on national security and foreign policy stuff. And the young black student came up, female student came up to doing a question and answer. And the first question she asked, do you
If
identify as
that's black.
black? So
I saw
obviously,
that, yes.
I was, what? I just finished talking about, a very preeminent foreign policy issue, and you're asking me, do I identify as black?
Mhm.
And who put that idea in their heads? And so I think that when you look at all this DEI, CRT, all of this stuff,
Mhm.
it is really about making people believe that they're victims
Mhm.
and they don't have any other course but to be a victim. And that's why Winston Churchill said that socialism is a philosophy of failure. It's a creed of ignorance. It is rooted in envy. And that's what you see people doing.
Mhm.
Karl Marx said, from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. So it's about pitting people against each other.
Right.
Coming out, I'm tax the rich, go after these people. The American dream says that no matter where you're born, no matter where you came from, you can achieve whatever you want.
Mhm.
But now all of a sudden, affordability is no, we're going to decide those outcomes. It's not about your opportunity, it's about the outcomes we create.
Mhm. I think that's why, in this meeting between Mondami and Trump, I think that a lot of, Trump supporters would be a little bit more, lenient with it versus his supporters. Because I started thinking about that. I can't imagine his supporters right now, sitting in the middle of the street screaming their heads off because he met with Trump. Because I think that conservatives are more willing and more likely to sit down and have a conversation.
Charlie Kirk?
Right, right. I was thinking about Charlie Kirk the other day, and I've been seeing a lot of people talking about turning points in schools and who's going to take up the torch and all that. I don't know that people really realize how unique and special Charlie
Yeah,
Kirk was,
yeah.
because I don't know anybody that could really fill his shoes to cover the topics and the range of topics from politics to religion the way he did, and the
Yeah.
way he was able to answer and rebut the people that came up to those microphones.
He was a once in a lifetime type of individual. And I will never forget when I met a 19-year-old young man by the name of Charlie Kirk. Uh, and this was 2013, 14, somewhere in there. And he was starting up Turning Point, and he asked me to be on his, board of advisors. Absolutely, so I'll do that.
Mm,
But to watch him grow over those past 12 years, it was just incredible. And to watch him grow in his faith, especially, and how he could articulate that. And no, it's not about someone coming in and replacing him. It's about all of us. One of my favorite movies is the original Spartacus with Kirk Douglas.
mhm,
And I still get teary-eyed at the end when, the Romans have captured all of them, they defeated them, and they asked them to turn over, the leader Spartacus. And one by one, they all stood up and said, "I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus." I mean, that's what we need to have. Everyone stand up and say, "I'm Charlie Kirk.
mm,
You're Charlie Kirk."
mhm,
Because that's how you perpetuate a movement.
mhm.
It's not about replacing that person. It's about, taking up your cross
Right.
and understand. And that's the power of our Christian faith.
Mhm.
It's about each and every one of us taking up our cross and continuing.
Right, I believe that. I believe that the church is beginning to make that move into those spaces
Mhm.
and those arenas and platforms, because in the past we've been kind of conditioned to believe that we have no business in the political world and
Yeah.
that we should kind of stay away from that. But as I've grown and as I've studied and looked into it, we have to, and as we see what's happening in the world, we have to get involved in those arenas and in those
Mhm.
spaces, because if we do not, then they will have free reign over the governance
Mhm.
of us as Christians. We saw it during COVID.
Yeah, it's a bait. Well, first of all, you're talking about Romans 12:2, where it says that you're not supposed to conform to the world. You're supposed to transform it by the renewing of your mind.
Right.
So it starts with us first and foremost. And the basic law of physics is that if you create a void, something's going to fill that void.
Mhm.
So for so long, the body of Christ, the church, has not been engaged into the culture. They ceded that territory over to the other side. And of course, darkness has filled that void. Now
Mhm.
it is time for the church to realize that they have to get back into the culture because we see the direction this. Who would have ever thought that we would be arguing one day about what is a woman?
Mhm.
or biological males competing in males female sports, or going into women's locker space. A Supreme Court, a nominee for a Supreme Court that gets asked a question, "What is a woman?" I can't define it.
Right.
Who would ever thought we'd get to this point?
Right.
So I think it's so important that the church engages. And the other thing is that we've got to get the church to understand, move away from this false narrative on separation of church and state.
Right. Correct.
You know, I never forget, I was speaking at the University of Miami to a political science group, and young lady comes up, and the University of Miami is one of these smart people kids
Mhm.
schools. She comes up and says, "Well, you're a congressman and you're talking about your faith. Don't you think you're violating the separation of church and state?" And I say, "Okay, so where is that written?" And this young lady said,
Yeah.
"Well, it's in the Constitution." I mean, that just shows here, she's an upper level student in political science, and she does not understand this. It's a letter. Thomas Jefferson wanted to reassure the Baptists.
Pastors.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Danbury Baptist Church of Connecticut, reassure them that Presbyterianism was not going to be the religion of the land. That's all it was,
Mhm.
because we saw what happened with King Henry when he created the Church of England. And all of a sudden, if you didn't bow down and worship the Church of England, then you were persecuted and prosecuted. That's why the founding fathers put our very first liberty in your Bill of Rights is the freedom of religion and the free exercise thereof. Separation of church and state was meant to ensure that the church is protected from the state,
Right.
not the other way around.
Right.
But we have got to get people, especially pastors, we got to get that new generation of black robe pastors, and you're one of them, to understand that.
Mhm. Yeah, because we were so easy to allow the government to try to come into the church during COVID in
Yeah.
2020. But everybody was okay with that. But the minute a church tries to say something about the government, separation of church and state, they'll cry out. And I was like, that's not
Absolutely.
even a document. That was a letter to pastors to assure them that the state wouldn't get in their business,
Yes.
not that we wouldn't get involved in government. And because of that, pastors and Christians together have kind of strayed away from that. And the moment there's criticism about you need to stay in the church, you shouldn't be out here, we crawl back into the church,
Hmm.
and that's been the history of what we've done. But we have
Hmm.
to take the stance. A lot of times, the world will step up and try to deal with the issues that we face, and they send the church kind of to the other room like we're little children.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we, the grown-ups, will take care of this, but the church needs to realize that we are the ones that's supposed to be standing on the forefront and making those decisions and giving guidance and
Mhm.
direction to the world whenever crises and difficult situations come about.
You're absolutely right, because what you just defined is the difference between the freedom of religion and the free exercise thereof to the freedom of defined worship. Because all of a sudden, when the government says, "We will let you worship where we say you can worship." I mean, the fact that during COVID, first and foremost, the government went way outside its
Mhm.
constitutional boundaries to tell private sector businesses they had to shut down. That's not anywhere in their purview and their scope. To tell churches that they have to close and shut down, that's a complete violation of your very first freedom of religion,
Mhm.
for the right to peaceably assemble,
Mhm.
all of these things. Because you could go to McDonald's, you could go to Home Depot, you could you could go out to a marijuana store, you could still go out to an abortion clinic,
Mhm.
but yet we're going to shut down churches.
Right.
And you and I were having this conversation earlier. Everyone wants to go back to Romans 13 and say, "See, you guys are supposed to be subject to us." Well, time out on the court, or as Lee Corso would say on ESPN College Football, not so fast, my friend,
Mhm.
because we in the body of Christ should be subject to
Right.
righteous governance that respects the rule of law. Because I get into this thing, people say, "Well, why don't you Christians, you just mean, you don't want people to come into the United States of America." Just wait. When God kicked Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden, guess what he did? He posted an angel with a sword of fire
Mhm.
to say, "You can't come back in."
Mhm.
That would be illegal entry. So he understands borders and boundaries, just the same as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. When they were told to violate their faith to God,
That's right.
they said, "Nope, can't do that."
You won't do it.
Well, we're gonna throw you into the furnace. Well, I guess you gotta do what you gotta do, man.
Mhm.
The next thing you know, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego created the first tanning salon because they were white boys when they went in. They came out looking like me, man. Or you look at Daniel. Okay, the same thing. Daniel,
Yep.
you got to bow down and you got to pray to Nebuchadnezzar. "Ah, I can't do that. I pray to my Lord, my God.
Mhm.
Well, we're gonna throw you down here into the lion's den. Well, next thing you know, Daniel creates the first petting zoo.
Right.
And so Christians need to understand is that, not so fast. When you are bringing up things that are a violation of our faith,
Mm.
no, we're not going to follow that. And I think that's an important thing when you look at Marxism, socialism, and communism. Karl Marx was an avowed atheist. Karl Marx hated religion. Karl Marx said that religion is the opiate of the masses.
Mm.
Karl Marx, one of the tenets of socialism is secular humanism. Because what we are now seeing is that, and you see that in all communist socialist systems of governance, they elevate government with a little g over God with a big G.
Mhm.
As we get ready to celebrate 250 years of this nation's independence, Pastor Joel, there's not another nation in this world that was created on a premise that's saying that the individual citizen is sovereign because their rights come from a sovereign God.
Mhm.
It's the embodiment of the natural rights theory of John Locke that says your inalienable rights of life, of liberty, and property. They don't come from man. They come from your sovereign God, the
That's right.
Judeo Christian faith heritage God.
That's right. And I was during that time, I was hearing pastors talk about how God first speaks to the government and then he speaks to us. And I was like, no. And then I heard a lot of pastors using the Romans 13 to kind of critique churches that were remaining open and that we should, obey the law and close down. But soon after that, Governor Abbott came out and he deemed the church as essential, which means that you have to show up. So police officers, firefighters, doctors, nurses, Walmart workers, HEB workers were essential. So they had to go to work.
Yeah,
But when Abbott came out and said the church was essential, that means the church has to show up.
absolutely.
And out of all these essential entities, the only one, so if cops wouldn't have shown up, or firefighters, or doctors, or nurses, we would have considered that dishonorable.
Hmm.
But the only entity that didn't show up after being deemed essential was the church. The church didn't open up for months later. They didn't show up the way Walmart workers showed up. And we didn't consider that as dishonor. Well, some did, right? But it was dishonorable for the church not to open up immediately to provide the care and the encouragement and the provision of the word that we needed. And it was sad to see, but I think a lot of pastors learned. I think that's why there's like an uprising of pastors
Yeah.
and organizations like the Patriot Academy and
Yes.
Liberty Pastors and CDF, Citizens Defending
Yes.
Freedom, and all these organizations that are set up to educate and empower pastors to be more vocal from the pulpit.
No, you have to have that. And I think a lot of folks don't realize, this whole thing about not being able to speak from the pulpit, the Johnson Amendment. Lyndon Johnson, when he was a senator here out of the state of Texas, of course, he goes on to become the president. But the whole thing about restricting the speech of pastors came because of the civil rights movement. Because Lyndon Johnson, who was quite an avowed racist, Lyndon Johnson did not want pastors in the church talking about civil rights. And so then all of a sudden he gets this amendment passed saying that you lose your quote unquote status. And so many pastors, even to today, have still been concerned about, I can't say this, I can't say
Mm.
that, I can't talk about this issue because I don't want to lose my 501c3 status. I've often told pastors, let me tell you something. When you show up on Judgment Day, I don't think God's going to ask you about your
Mm.
501c3 status. I don't think God's going to check your 1040 form.
Mhm.
Okay. He's going to ask you, what did you do? Did you do as it says in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 2 through 5? Did you preach the word in season and out?
Right.
Or did you go out there and spread these false narratives? Did you go out there and try to tickle people's ears
Mhm.
so that you could be accommodating? And
Yeah.
so I think that this is a gut check time for pastors to say, you know what? As Farragut said during the Civil War, going up through Mobile Bay, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead.
Mhm.
And it is time for the church to do that.
Yeah, we've taught our children to only stand up for what you believe if there's no consequences to it.
There's no pushback.
Right. There
And
was some guy that was swimming with women, and they some people were saying, well, why didn't they refuse to swim against this guy? Why didn't they take a stand? And some responded, well, because they would have lost their scholarships. And then the people that were arguing that kind of like said like, oh yeah, okay, I can see that. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean? It's
yeah,
still not okay. So lose your scholarship.
yeah.
Like, why are we teaching our children not to stand up for them for anything for what they believe unless it doesn't require consequences? If it requires consequences, then you're justified in not standing up.
Because now we are getting to that point of being risk averse. And it brings me back to a great thing that my mom beat into my head. A man must stand for something, else he'll fall for anything.
Mhm.
And when I was in Congress, it's very interesting up there in Washington D.C., Pastor Joel. I mean, if you want someone to take you to breakfast, someone will take you to breakfast. You
Yeah.
want them to take you to lunch, they'll take you to lunch. You want to take you to dinner, they'll take you to dinner. You want them to come by and give you a late midnight snack, they'll give you a late midnight, but it comes at a cost
Mhm.
because you lose a little something. And I think that we have got to get to a point where we are teaching our young people about honor, integrity, and character. The only Michael Jackson song that I ever liked was Man in the Mirror.
Mm.
Because the person that you see in the mirror at the beginning of the day, you've got to recognize that person at the end of the day.
Right.
But if we continue to teach our kids, there's no such thing as a standard. There's no such thing as truth. It's your truth, is their truth, is whatever truth. You don't ever want to take a stand. And I think that again, coming back to Charlie Kirk, we're starting to see young people, especially young men, saying, "I'm done. I'm done with it.
Mhm.
I want something that gives me truth,
Mhm.
gives me direction."
Yes.
And it's interesting because when you look at some of the surveys, they're not going to these wishy-washy, flashy churches. They want structured churches. They want disciplined churches. They want they want to know about the word of God.
They want to be
They
challenged
want
and
to be
confronted.
challenged. They want to be confronted. Thomas Jefferson had a great quote. He said, "In matters of style, swim with the current. But in matters of substance, stand like a rock. In matters
Mhm.
of principle, stand like a rock." And that's where we're getting back to, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sacrifice many times, and you're somebody that's familiar with sacrifice. By the way, thank you so much for your
It's
service.
my pleasure.
You are a decorated military officer who saw combat and battle. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Just I'm not so familiar with everything that you've experienced when it comes
It's
to that.
that's what I was an artillery officer, and that's what you train to do. You train for that day when the country says, "We need you. We need you to go out there and be on that rampart." And I came from a family of that. I mean, my dad was a World War II veteran. My older brother was Vietnam, almost lost his life at a place called Khe Sanh. My father-in-law did 2 combat tours of duty in Vietnam as an Army infantryman.
Mm.
So I had all of these people around me. And so, being in combat, what I always told my soldiers before you deployed, whoever you are here, you've got to leave that person here. And then when you go into that combat zone, the country is asking you to be a warrior,
Mm.
asking you to be someone different. You still have to have your moral compass, but you are there understanding that every single day you wake up, someone is looking to kill you.
Right.
And you either get to fighting or you get to dying.
Mm.
But when your time over there is over, you've got to find a way to leave that person there and come back and pick up the person that you are here.
Mm.
That's a hard thing. That compartmentalizing is very hard. And I think that's why you see a lot of young people, with the PTS and some of these other things because they're not able to do that. And again, that's why I think it's so important. I remember telling my chaplain before we went to Iraq, I said, "You are the most important person in this unit. There are going to be things that no one is going to come to me to talk about.
Mm,
No one's going to come to the command sergeant major or to their platoon leaders, platoon sergeants, first sergeants, come command. You have to be the one that's there to give them that spiritual strength to be able to
mm,
persevere. Because combat is much like what it says in Romans chapter 5, verse 3 through 5. It's a trial and tribulation. It's a crucible. I
mhm,
mean, when you think about every day, it's not like going out deer hunting. The deer can't shoot back at you.
mhm,
You're going out there and you're hunting someone or you're being hunted by someone. And that produces perseverance. And through that perseverance, you build your character. And it really goes back to, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, who gives me strength. Be strong and of good courage. The Lord thy God shall never leave you nor forsake you. You cannot be in combat. Like people always say, there's no atheist in a foxhole.
no,
So you're not gonna cry out to anything else but God. God save me,
right,
God help me.
right,
And I think that's what that spiritual aspect, that spiritual fitness is so important
mhm,
for you being in combat. But for me, to be put in charge of hundreds of lives, that is something where you got to be on your knees
mhm,
and you just got to pray, Lord, help me to always make the right decision to protect the greatest resource that we have here in the United States of America, the lives of our young men and women.
mhm. And you have to believe in what you're fighting for and what you're defending. Within these past several years, we've seen our Constitution be compromised. We've
Hmm.
seen what America believes and stands for be compromised, and I would say it's very close to being lost. What many men and women gave their life to defend.
Hmm.
You know, um, talking about 2020, I wanna touch on some maybe controversial things that uh, you perhaps have the benefit of having some better insight into, like the 2020 elections, like Jan 6, um, like the defense of our country, like what uh, Biden and that whole administration and perhaps Obama involved in that
Of course, he
was
was
been
involved.
trying to do with
Yeah.
our country, beginning with 2020 when in 2024 when Trump won again, they had a chart on the elections and the votes. And for the previous elections, there was a certain amount of votes. In 2020, there was like an increase of about 15 million votes
Yeah.
that came out of nowhere
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden disappeared again in the 2024 election. Um, I stand with what the president talked about, being the election being stolen. What's your insight in that? And do you have any kind of information that would help us to stand a little bit stronger on the
Sure.
fact that that was
Well, the
stolen?
thing that you're bringing out, if I'm correct, Barack Obama, I think his highest voting turnout was like 69 million.
Mhm,
Then, of course, Joe Biden, somehow he hits 81 million.
mhm,
But you have to go back to, and again, this is tied to COVID, and why I believe that this was more of, as Rahm Emanuel said, never let a good crisis go to waste. Uh, Eric Holder, who was Barack Obama's attorney general, and then later he became the head of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee. He wrote an article. I want to say it was April of 2020, and the title of the article was "How COVID Can Permanently Change Elections in the United States." And what was the crux of that article? The crux of that article was about using mail-in ballots. First of all, mail-in ballots is unconstitutional. You either vote in person, or if you can't be there to vote in person, being early voting or election day, you apply for an absentee ballot. An absentee ballot is controlled. You have to actually request the absentee ballot. You have to have signature verification on an absentee ballot. What mail in ballot was basically just mailing out ballots to addresses that, in many cases, there had never been a voter registration roll review. That's what happened in that election in 2020. When all of a sudden we've got ballot drop boxes. Oh, what can go wrong with a
mhm,
ballot drop box?
mhm,
Mail in ballots. And we came very close to some very nefarious things that would have happened in Harris County because you had Chris Hollins, I believe that's his name. He was the appointed supervisor of elections in Harris County, the largest county in the state of Texas. There was a warehouse with millions of ballots that they were going to be mailing out. Donald Trump in 2020 only won Texas by 600,000 votes. Now imagine if all of those votes had gotten out. So that is really the thing that you have to look at. I'm not smart enough to talk about algorithms and manipulations, but the bottom line is that they instituted and implemented an unconstitutional means by which they voted. And now, guess what you got? You got this nutcase, Eric Swalwell, out there in California talking about we should be able to vote by phone. Really?
That guy's a knucklehead.
He is.
And he says he's going to be running for governor.
He is, yeah. And that's what he wants. He wants to be able to vote by phone. So, I think it was Joseph Stalin. There was a quote attributed to him that it is not the person who casts the ballot that counts. It's the person that counts the ballot who matters. And I think that's what you see happening. And even in the 2024 election, 12 of the states that Kamala Harris won, she didn't win a lot, but 12 of the states that Kamala Harris won had no voter ID. So it's not by happenstance that all of a sudden you want to open up our borders unconstitutionally, an impeachable offense, high crime and misdemeanor, what Biden and Harris did. But you open up our country to a bunch of people to come here illegally, and the next thing you know, they're voting in elections. You don't want to have voter ID.
And you strategically are placing them throughout the country.
Absolutely.
And important states like Ohio and all those areas where they were trying to
Harris County
increase the seats as well.
Yes.
Congress and representatives and stuff like that. It was amazing to watch. And it just looks like common sense to me. But
it is common sense.
People struggle with it.
Well, I don't know why. Well, I tell you why they struggle with it. And, this is why, people that know me know that wherever I go, I carry this. Because I took an oath to support and defend it.
Right.
The Declaration and the Constitution. And when we don't teach that, we don't understand that. We have a generation that doesn't understand civics.
No.
Most Americans can't go out there and tell you the three branches of government. And so it's very easy. I mean, most people think an executive order is law. It's not. Okay. So we have a real, again, this is about an education process.
That was my issue when they were putting out executive orders and people were saying you got to obey the law. So my thing was like, I know the law and the Constitution is the law of the land, and the Constitution tells me that I'm able to assemble. And it was just amazing how so many people were this close to just throwing out the Constitution.
They weren't close. They were.
Yeah.
They were throwing out the Constitution.
I was in a meeting and somebody was, some attorneys, it was with a group of pastors, and they were talking about how we will defend the Constitution, this, that, and the other, because they'll go against it. I was like, but the Constitution is only worth as much as the people are willing to stick by it.
Yeah.
But if they decide, nah, let's throw it away, it can be done in an instant, and they'll accuse you and throw you in jail, which they were throwing pastors in jail. I know a few pastors that didn't close their church and they got thrown in jail.
Which is, again, a complete violation of their first liberty.
But people were cheering it on. It was against the Constitution, but people were cheering it on.
Because what happened was that when you fearmonger people so much to say that you're going to die, and what do you hear? What is the left? I mean, if you don't pass this, you're going to die. If the government is shut down because if we don't get these Obama subsidies, you're going to die.
People are going to die.
Everywhere you turn around, people are going to die. Now, but the interesting thing, Pastor Joel, is that more people have died because of socialism and communism than any other thing in the 20th century, and now going into the 21st century. And so this is this fear mongering. You better wear a mask. You better wear 2 masks, or else you're going to die. You better keep 6 feet. If you open up your church, people are going to die. And so what ends up happening is that you're demonized, you're denigrated, you're disparaged, and people hate you because you're going to cause me to die. Not to mention the fact you're talking about eternal life here.
And it's strange because you're right, but the voices, they make you want to question your stance and your decision, and you have to go to God and say, I know that I'm right here. You want to make sure you're right, so you go to God and then you take the stand. and it's not always easy.
You got to go into the furnace.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to the 2020 and the elections, and it was Vice President Pence that I think he held some kind of ability or opportunity to have those votes counted or something challenged,
Yeah, yeah, challenge them.
which led up to Jan 6, which to me, I've seen the videos, I've seen the rulings and all that, where there was FBI agents and all kinds of agents that were provoking that were behind that it was kind of a hoax, and yet people will still use it, and as if though it actually happened, the Jan 6. And I'm like, that's been proven a hoax. Why isn't it more open? Why isn't it more open knowledge?
Because it serves their narrative.
Mhm.
So the thing is that in this, the hypocrisy is laughable. Antifa can go out there and beat and shoot people. I mean, I live up in the Dallas Metroplex area. They can have snipers to shoot at ICE agents.
Mhm.
They can, conduct an ambush of a, detention facility in Alvarado, Texas. But that's fine. You can go out there and you can try to run over ICE agents. That's fine. You can go out there and you can attack and burn down police precincts, federal, offices and buildings in Portland. That's fine. See, we've got to understand that it is impossible to reason with people that their whole reason of existence, their whole mantra is about fear, intimidation, coercion, threats, and ultimately violence. And I just got to tell you that what they did to Americans. I mean, you're just a grandma that's up there in Washington D.C. Next thing you know, someone's knocking on your door. But
Mhm.
yet, how many of these Antifa folks? I'm glad that we finally designate them as a domestic terrorist
Terrorists.
organization. But let's start following the money.
Right.
Let's start, identifying these people and put them away.
Jan 6 people got thrown in prison. I don't know of any Antifa that got thrown in prison.
We finally, the folks that shot up conducted the ambush against the detention facility in Alvarado, they just pled guilty. First time, 6 of them. I mean, they're dead to rights, of course. But that's the first time. This has been going on since the first Trump administration.
Mhm.
And now, even worse, Pastor Joe, when you are an elected official and you're inciting people to violence, you're calling law enforcement officers. I've never seen this. This is how crazy the world has gotten in the United States of America. We are attacking law enforcement officers that are enforcing the law.
Mhm.
If you are a governor or a mayor or whatever, and you are, inciting people to attack, you should be arrested. And I got to tell you, I don't know if you saw this recent video where these two senators and four members of the United States House of Representatives told members of the military to not follow Trump's illegal orders.
Yeah.
But okay, so which order is illegal? We don't we can't really tell you. But you just stood up and incited people to disobey the commander in chief. That's sedition.
Mhm.
Something should be done to you. If anything, you have a vote to censure them in the House and the Senate. You strip them of their committee positions. You take away their security clearances. And oh, by the way, I just saw today flying down here that Senator Mark Kelly, the UCMJ, I'm a retired officer. I still have to uphold certain principles of the UCMJ. They're going to call him back into active duty, put him in a uniform, and they can charge him under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. We got to start doing that. The gloves have to come off.
Yeah, a lot of these military generals even really surprised me. Um, General Mattis, when he first came out on the scene, I was like super impressed. I was like, man, this is a man's man.
That
Well, then he's,
left leaning.
yeah, I started seeing him like uh, talk about his commander in chief, and I was like, General, you're a man that expects the men under you to go into and fulfill a mission, and you can't afford them to be questioning your decision at every turn.
Yeah.
Yet you are on matters that were not very important. contradicting the president and kind of talking against him, and I was like, I lost total respect for this man who said always show up with a, I think it was a knife or something.
Yeah, Mad Dog.
Mad Dog Mattis.
Well, you know, it's interesting because Lloyd Austin, who is Biden's Secretary of Defense, I remember, you know, serving at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He was a brigade commander in the 3rd Brigade, the 505th Fifth Parachute Infantry Regiment. His call sign was Panther 6. I mean, he was, you know, a walking bad dude. I mean, just tough guy.
Mhm.
But what folks have to realize is that 2-star, 3-star, 4-star generals or admirals levels, those are not based upon going before a board of your peers for promotion. Those are political appointments. They're done through the Senate.
Okay.
So you have to start looking and seeing, okay, when did these guys once you hit Rear Admiral or Brigadier General in the Marine Corps, Army, and Air Force, after that it's political appointments.
Mm.
So what do you think a lot of these 2-star, 3-star, 4-stars, if they want to get to those levels, they start to kind of cower and go along with what's the political atmosphere
Mhm.
instead of remembering the oath that they took, because that's what they're supposed to be focused on.
That's interesting and makes a lot of sense because I was wondering how do men of that stature, because I obviously, I guess I didn't know his stature, how do military men of these ranks become liberal? Like, it just doesn't make sense. That doesn't seem reasonable to me because they're supposed to be disciplinary, authoritative.
But
Um,
they're supposed to follow the Constitution.
right.
And I don't call them liberals because, again, classical liberalism, John Locke, Second Treatise of Government, life, liberty, and property, this is not what we have.
Leftists, what would you call them?
Leftists, progressives, Marxists, socialists, I look at their philosophy of governance. That defines who they are. But they're very crafty. They can take anything and flip it. You know, we get told, you know, in Hispanic, you vote for Democrats because they believe in democracy.
Mhm.
No,
Not really.
not really. They're liberals. They don't believe in individual rights and freedoms.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so we have to start defining them. This again comes back to that education process. We have to define them based upon their principles and beliefs and what they do. The word progressive, it was introduced into the United States of America at the turn of the century, 1900, when the European communists said, we got to get into America. But how do we do it? We can't just come to America and call ourselves communists. So what would we call ourselves?
Mm.
Progressives. And you go back and you look at Woodrow Wilson, that was the first progressive presidency in the United States of America. To another extent, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a progressive president. Then Lyndon Johnson, Jimmy Carter, and then Barack Obama just took it to the next level.
Right.
But now they're openly telling you that they're progressive. They're openly telling you that they're Marxists. They're openly telling you that they're socialists.
Yeah, I was talking to General Flynn, an opportunity that I had to ask him a question, and we were talking about how it was intentional, the kind of like the destruction, the deterioration of our country while Biden was in office in that administration. And I asked him, so who's behind it? Because it seems very nefarious. It seems like there's like people behind, in the shadows
Like the
and
Wizard
dark
of
rooms.
Oz, you know, the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, well, his answer to me was, well, first of all, I asked him why, and they said, well, they want to bring in communism. And then I asked him who is at the top of this, and he told me Obama.
Yeah.
I was a little surprised by that. I thought maybe Obama was just kind of a puppet in this whole thing, but he said no, he's like a main character in this whole
Well,
thing.
he is. I mean, you know, you've got the financiers, you know, like a Soros or, you know, a Tom Stein, all these different individuals, or, you know, the globalists led by, you know, Klaus Schwab. I think that's,
Schwab.
yeah. But when you look at the person that really is the manipulator, remember Barack Obama in 2008, speaking at the University of Missouri, Columbia, Missouri, he said, we're 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States.
Mhm.
And everybody just cheered and clapped. Nobody stopped to say, hey, you know, coach, time out.
Mhm.
What are you talking about?
Why are we trying to fundamentally
Mentally
change?
transform the
Yeah.
United States. I mean, first of all, why didn't we ask the question? Okay, what what is it that you're transforming us to, or even what is what you're transforming us from?
From. Mhm.
And so again, that's where we got to have critical thinkers and not just the mindless lemmings and the useful idiots, Vladimir Lenin's terminology, that
Mhm.
just are the seals. They just think,
Mhm.
you know, I look, you know, every now and then I flip on the View or look at tapes of the View,
Mhm.
and these women say
It's
some of the
fun.
craziest, most
Mhm.
obnoxious things. And what do you hear the audience? Yeah,
Yep.
the clapping seals. They have so dumbed down the system of education in the United States of America. We don't even question stupidity.
Mhm.
And I think that Barack Obama came along and they said, how can we, you know, get this foothold? How can we get this in here? Let's just take this guy. Remember when he gave the keynote speech at the Democrat convention? I think it was 2004. My wife and I are sitting there saying, that's the guy they're going to be running for president not too long. Sure as all get out. That was the guy.
Mhm.
Because it's all about the image.
Mhm.
It's all about the rhetoric. I mean, the guy was fantastic giving the speech with a teleprompter,
Very charismatic.
very
Mhm.
charismatic. And who was also charismatic? Mom Donnie. What
Mhm.
did people say? I like how he
Mhm.
smiles. Who was also charismatic? Fidel Castro. Who
Mhm.
was also charismatic? Adolf Hitler. Who was also charismatic? Chairman Mao. Who was also charismatic? Hugo Chavez.
Mhm.
We've got to start recognizing this. And leftism is based upon image because they want to present such a powerful image. You don't pay attention to the words. I'll never forget because, you know, me and black, Obama's running, first black president, blah, blah, blah. You know, friends saying, you got to vote for this guy. Why? And I just challenged. I said, look, do me a favor. The next time he's going to give a speech, don't watch the speech.
Mhm.
I want you to wait and afterwards and get the transcript of the speech and read the words. I had a couple of friends that took me up on that. And they said, "Man, what the hell is this guy talking about?" You know, but it was just you just get captivated by this image.
Mhm.
And you know you know was that iambic pentameter rhetoric.
Mhm.
Ah, yeah,
Yeah.
you know. And he just sold us a bad bill of goods.
Mhm.
He didn't do anything for this country. And Joe Biden was just, you know, his third term.
So but he's got power.
I
Um,
think he's losing it though.
he's losing it.
Yeah, I think that right now the this quote unquote Democrat Party, the it's dead. I mean, the Democrat Party that my parents were part of, you know, was, you know, you had conservative blue dog. That's dead.
Mhm.
This is a Marxist socialist party.
Mhm.
And I don't think that Barack Obama has a place there. He's not radical enough for the radicals.
Right.
So this is a very interesting. This is going to be a very interesting year next year.
Well, he came out and called out, black males to to vote for
Biggest,
Kamala.
he should Trump should have sent him a Thanksgiving turkey
Yeah.
last year,
Yeah.
because when he came down and scolded young black men, basically
Mhm.
called them misogynists and haters
Mhm.
because they didn't vote for Kamala. I mean, that was it. And what did you see? You saw record numbers
Leaving.
of young black men.
Yeah, leaving the Democratic Party and becoming conservative. I think they're conservative. We're just waking up to it, to
Yeah,
realizing what we really
always have been.
are. You know what
Always
I
have
mean?
been.
They used to utilize Trump in their songs and music and culture, and then all of a sudden, they were told, the culture was told that they should hate Trump, so they
Yeah,
made a complete 180 and started hating him instead of singing about him in music
yeah,
videos and in songs. Um, how is it that we can be manipulated so easy to hate someone or to like someone that we don't even agree with? I mean, with Kamala, you were seeing Beyonce up on the stage. You were seeing, um, what's her name, Cardi B up on the stage. You were seeing all these people up on the stage that had to be paid to speak for her.
yeah.
Um, Leonardo DiCaprio. You're getting all these people. I was like, what does she have? What do they have on these celebrities that they would
Well,
go out there and speak on their
celebrities want
behalf?
relevance, and the culture wants to be, preeminent. Andrew Breitbart once said, politics flows downstream from the culture. And again, coming back, that's why the body of Christ has got to get engaged and get back involved in the culture to show that it is cool
Mhm.
to be a Christian.
Yeah.
And I think that the other thing is we have to show that, going around saying that, you're going to get stuff for free, you're losing your freedom.
Mhm.
And so I think that anytime someone steps up, because once upon a time, all these Democrats, they love Trump. I mean, he was their boy up there in New
Mm.
York. But now all of a sudden he breaks camp and gets away from them. And, he's public enemy number one, just the same as you saw. Let's go out there and burn up all these Tesla dealerships.
Mhm.
Elon Musk was once, our darling, but now, no, we got to hate him. They don't want you to think for yourself.
Right. You mentioned, Christianity. I I would, becoming cool or whatever. I don't know that that's the thing, but it is becoming more appealing. I've seen so many podcasts, and I've been talking about this for quite some time, where we're seeing men coming out and talking about God on
Yeah.
everywhere,
Yeah.
right? They're no longer ashamed, no longer embarrassed to talk about God. And maybe they don't know they're supposed to be. I think the world has done a good job in making Christians think that they're less than, and they should
Hmm.
be embarrassed about speaking up, because the Christians that are portrayed in Hollywood and in movies and all kinds of shows are passive, insignificant
Or they're
males.
maniacal. They
Yeah,
make them seem, maniacal or whatever,
right.
Yeah.
But you're getting all kinds of men beginning to rise up. You got people. I don't know if he's a Christian or not, but Jordan Peterson. You have Joe Rogan even like searching. You have Sean Ryan
Hmm.
searching, and you have Kid Rock introducing Joe Rogan to Jesus, and
Hmm.
you got all kinds of people, all kinds of platforms and stages and arenas where Jesus is being talked about, and people are no longer embarrassed about it.
No.
And they're being bold and just talking about the Lord.
Well, there's a God-shaped hole in so many hearts.
Mhm.
And the world is and the culture has said, you can fill it with all the stuff that we'll give you. But there's only one thing that fills it.
Mhm.
And I think that, when you look at how many young people that are living in despair, the rate of suicides amongst our young people, they're starting to realize, there's got to be something better.
Mhm.
And again, they come at that's what Charlie Kirk showed them. I mean, when they could see a young man, strong and professing his faith unabashedly,
Mhm.
doing so, and having this, beautiful, successful life with his wife and his two, kids. People want that.
Right.
People want that sense of fulfillment.
Mhm.
Going out and getting drunk, that's not fulfilling.
Right.
Going out and getting involved in all the mess that the world, it's not fulfilling. And now all of a sudden you see that, young people are rejecting this, go out and remake yourself in whatever image you want.
Mhm.
We were made in God's image, as male and female.
Right.
And so that's the truth that they want.
Right.
But we have to be there to give it to them.
Well, we have to present it to them. We
Yes.
we have it. I often talk about how the church uh, went through some stage where they wanted to be relevant to the world,
Mhm.
and create an atmosphere in the church where they could feel
Be
comfortable
accepted.
in. Yeah,
Yeah.
where they could feel comfortable in. Like they tried to make the church look like what they were used to out in the world. But
Hmm.
when people, I think today, when they're coming into the church, they're looking for something different, something that they cannot find out in the world.
Yes.
They wanna be challenged, I believe. They wanna be confronted, I believe, because they know that there's more.
Hmm.
And if the church only gives them the same that they can get out in the world, be they're
They're
going
going to
to
default. Yeah.
yeah, they're just gonna leave and say, "Well, I tried it.
Yeah.
I thought there would be something more there, and I didn't find it."
I remember, I grew up in Atlanta, and of course, that's the headquarters for Coca Cola. And I'll never forget when they created this thing called New Coke,
Yeah.
biggest flop ever. Everybody's like,
Had
you know,
that little gray strip on
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody want just, I just want Coke.
Mhm.
And I think that's what people want. People just want good old Coca Cola. Don't give me
Mhm.
the new Coke. Don't give me vanilla Coca Cola, whatever. Just give me a good ice cold Coca-Cola.
Yeah, and that Mexican bottle, that
Yeah.
Mexican Coke's the best. But yeah, that's just pure. And I think Trump is trying to bring that Mexican Coke back. I think it's made with cane, sugar cane, or I don't know what it
Mhm.
is, but he's trying to create that over here as well. But you can't compete with just good old fashioned gospel,
No,
the word straight as it is, being a word preacher in a word preaching church. I think that's what we need. I think that's what America needs,
mhm,
because we have to be confronted by the Word of God. I think
absolutely.
a real man or a student of manhood will always run into God,
Yes,
and then you got to decide what you're going to do with him.
yes, and look, is that's the foundation. That's the basic. I'm a college football nut. I mean, everybody brought up down south, we love college football, and y'all love it out here in Texas
Mm.
too, high school and college football. Football is all about two things: blocking and tackling. We have to get back to the blocking and tackling of our faith. And like you said, preach the word in season and out. Give people the word. Help them to understand the word. Nothing fancy. Don't get them in here and get them focused on, music or other. It's the word.
Mhm.
That's what they come. That's what they're hungry for.
Yes, sir.
And of course, young bucks, young ladies, you got to start them off with the milk. They're not ready to go right to the T-bone steak. So start them out with the crawl, walk, and run, but get them to understand the word.
Mentor them and challenge them. And I think we're sometimes afraid to challenge, but men like challenge, men
Of
like
course,
risk. We thrive on it.
of
And we
course.
got to be willing to put that out there because the world surely does.
Yeah.
You are a man of stature. You're a military
I'm
man.
only 5'9".
You're
So,
you're a leader in your own right,
you're too
and
kind.
you have a leadership mindset, um, and you love God.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How would you describe your love for God before we close?
You're looking at a young man that was born in an inner city hospital in Atlanta, Georgia, in 1961, that was blacks only. There is no other place where I have these opportunities than a country that is built upon that Judeo Christian faith heritage. And in Christ, I am more than a conqueror. In America, I can be a victor, not a victim. And I will tell you that the things that I've been through, the things that I've seen, I go just by the grace of God. 5 years ago, I had a horrible motorcycle accident on I-35, got hit from behind going 75 miles per hour. You don't walk away from that. And I think it was an opportunity for the Lord to just say, I'm going to hurt you a little bit, but I just want you to know you're still here because I got some more things for you to do.
Mm.
And so my love of God comes from my mom and dad that taught me to love God because they love God. It comes from a country that was established on the Judeo Christian faith heritage principles that says all of my rights and liberties come from Him, the Creator God. And so, why would I not want to serve that?
Mhm. Amen. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, thank you for joining me in the den. It's been a pleasure, a long-awaited pleasure
Yeah.
that you brought us here to the den.
We'll have to come back and do it again next year as we celebrate 190 years of Texas independence and 250 years of American independence.
Amen. I look forward to it.
God bless you.